Hello everyone and welcome to another mod tutorial. Just kidding. This is actually a setup guide for Nexus, the server sectoring and data sync plugin on the Torch website. Fair warning right off the bat, this is a paid plugin, one-time purchase. Any updates after that are free. I do encourage you though, if you can keep updating, to go ahead because this project is massive. And I've put a ton of work into it in the past 3 or 4 months. So what I'm going to be walking through is a general setup, how to get everything, all the servers communicating, how to set up your sectors, and what to think about when you're starting up your new world, and make sure things stay in sync and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up single player first, and I'm just going to create a new game, custom game, and we're just going to load up the normal star system map, and we'll say this will be Nexus world setup. There we go. We don't really, I want it to be in creative, whatever, we'll start it up. So what you need to think about when you start choosing your sectors is when you place your planets or any other stuff, you want to go ahead and place them all into one world. Lay out your world like you normally would for one server. And in this case, you can do it on a normal Torch server if you wanted to. Just log into the password and put your planets in. But I always find it easier just to do it in single player and place all your planets in this way. So where am I? Where's Earth? Over here. Okay. So I'm not going to put any extra planets in, but I'm going to have a Earth/Moon sector, and I'm going to have a Mars and whatever this little small moon is, Europa, around Mars. So I'll have a sector around that and a sector around Earth, and we'll have basically everything else. So after you put all your planets in and you think about what kind of sectors you can do, and there's two types of sectors you can do. Well, two different thought processes here when setting up your sectors is, number one, you can have nested sectors. So a sector within a sector within a sector, sectorception. You can actually do that and organize your world into that. So if you want to break up your world more than once, you can. The next thing is you can actually run multiple sectors on one Torch server. So it doesn't have to be one sector per server. If you wanted to, you could actually put a sector around each of these voxels, or the planets here, and run all the planets, all the voxel deformation stuff on one server. And so that makes it kind of unique, because then if a player's jumping between this sector and Mars, and they have a GPS point inside that sector, and they can make the jump fully, what actually happens is they won't actually have to log out of the server. They'll just jump to that point, and they won't know the wiser. It'll still report them as a different sector, they just won't switch servers. So that's kind of helps you and set up what you want to run population wise for your server. If you feel the need, you can do that, or if you want to split up your voxels even more, do whatever you want. It's very configurable, I think, with sectors. Of course, they're all spherical regions. I haven't done quadrants yet or anything, but I think that's kind of a planned thing I want to do in the future is, have like rectangular cubicle spots in space quadrants, maybe a 9x9x9 quadrant. That'd be kind of sick. So, alright, so after I got the world here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get the GPS points of the centers of the sectors that I want. So in this case, let's start with the Earth one. I'm just going to slap a new GPS down. It's easier to, get the coordinates here. And I want it to encompass the moon. So I usually do about 250 kilometers. So I check that with my camera to make sure, that's a good enough range before they hit the sector boundary, 250 kilometers around that. So I'm just going to open up a text file. New text file here. I've got it on my other monitor, so I guess can't see it. But I'm just going to be copying this, we'll say this, Earth/Moon sector, right? And I could actually, that'd be kind of sick if I could do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this GPS coordinate, just copy to clipboard, and I'm going to paste it in my little text document here. So now I've got the Earth/Moon sector about 250 kilometers. I'm going to write 250 kilometers right underneath it just so I remember. And then I'm going to go set up the Mars one. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to choose a point. I don't really know the center of this planet. There's ways you can do it. SE WorldGen does it if you're using that, but I'm just going to put mine kind of right here, just GPS, new from current position, say Mars / Europa sector. There we go. And let me check the, it's not popping up, is it? Always visible. Oh, you know my body's way over there. There you go. Lesson learned, do not do that. So actually paste my body here. There we go. Okay, GPS. New from current position. Mars sector. There we go. We'll just name it Mars sector. Europa. So in this case, so minimum distance here, that's 100 kilometers. Let's just double check the other side of the planet here. I think 250 would be fine. So we'll just make the both sides of 250 kilometers, just looking at the distances there. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go over here, copy to clipboard, paste this in a text document, and I'll put 250 kilometers underneath. So there we go. I'm going to save my world with all my planets in it. And I'm going to grab it right now for my saves. If you're doing this from single player, you can find your saves in your %app data Space Engineers folder. So here we are, %app data Space Engineers worlds saves right here, and then my Steam ID, and then Nexus world setup. So it's easy as that. So I've got that copied now and ready to go. On the other note is now I'm going to open up all these torch servers here, and I'm just going to paste my save, my single player save, in all the servers I'm going to be using. So just drop the save into your torch saves, and then you can select that world once you bring up the UIs. So now we're going to talk about a little bit on the controller side, the required external application used for Nexus here, and you should see it. Fair warning, this UI is going to change drastically. The controller is a piece of crap. I wrote it fairly quickly, just I could test stuff with. So I would not trust anything on this because it is prone to damages, but it's okay for right now. So the information is just a little bit of info on how the Nexus works and all the setups and how the sectors play. I'm going to skip that. I hope you guys understand what Nexus does, and when I get here in testing, I'll be able to show you guys, hopping between sectors and stuff. So as you see here, I've already got some stuff set up. So I'm going to delete this. It does save your configs, but in this case, let's start fresh. So this is what happens if you're starting completely new. What you want to do then is grab that text document, and we'll go ahead and create our Earth/Moon sector. And so all you have to do is enter in this GPS, add new, and there you go. So it fills in our XYZ automatically. The radius doesn't come in the GPS, it defaults to 100 kilometers, so we're just going to type in our 250 kilometers. So you might be wondering what all this other stuff does. So to start off with, the server ID is a unique number assigned to one of your torch servers, and so I will actually start one of those right now. So the ID you can actually put in this torch server, and it can be any number you want, non-zero. Do not put 0 in there, or here. You cannot put 0. It can be any number non-zero. So in this case, 1 is this server ID. Let me start up the other one. And you can see I labeled this server 2. So you can see like torch server 2 here. So plugins, load. There we go. So this one's server ID 2, and this defaults to 10. So any number in there works. But the server ID actually is what server you want to run this sector in. So in this case, I don't have a server 10, but I want to run this sector on server 1. So that's as simple as just putting in a 1 there. Of course, our sector name came from the GPS, but you could rename this whatever. This will just pop up when people, transfer sectors. It'll tell you like, hey, Earth/Moon sector is offline, or you're being transported to Earth/Moon sector. All those, that's what pops up in the name. The description here is kind of a unique thing I've set up. So whenever you first join a sector, it doesn't matter if you've never been there before or you have been there before, a little quest log window pops up in the top left of your screen, and it gives you some sector readouts. So it says, hey, welcome to the sector, total players online, your sector size and the sector dimensions, and your customizable sector description. So if you wanted NPCs to have a higher spawn rate or in a server, or if you wanted the Earth/Moon sector to be PvE only, you can say, hey, PvE only, noobs can start here. So that's a simple thing you can put up, if you want players to start there. So the IP and domain and port. This is what you use to direct connect to your server in Space Engineers. So it has to be a public IP, cannot be a local one. This also works with domain names. So if you want to like direct connect to your server via domain name, it'll grab the IP of that domain name and it'll send you. And of course, required port. Just as if you were direct connecting here. So let me actually grab my public IP here. So of course you can just what is my IP? There we go. And this IP will most likely change over this video because of obvious reasons, but whatever. We're going to go ahead and find the port, which this server ID, has to match the IP of the server you're putting this on. So the IP and port have to match whatever the server is running on. So let's find server number 1, which is this case. And I'm running them all on the same computer, so I don't really have to worry about this public IP thing. But in this case, the server IP is 270.16, or the port is 270.16, so 270.16, there we go. So the last thing is this sector type. So there's 4 different sector types, and I'll run through what each of those do. So the first one, right here off the top, is the lobby server. Now the lobby server is a unique thing where the lobby server is the only server that pops up in the SE server listings. So all your players actually join the lobby server first, then get redirected to those private sectors that don't actually pop up in the server browser. So the lobby server manages all that. It's basically as it sounds. Players join that, wait if their server's offline. They can chill, spawn there, read the rules, all that. So we don't want this to be lobby server. We actually want this to be the default sector. So the default sector is basically just a normal sector, but it's what players default to when they first join the lobby. So they join the lobby. If they've never been in the game before, it's going to send them to the default sector. So it's kind of a thing where, hey, if you want your noobs to join the server, newbies on the game, and you want them to join the Earth/Moon sector, which is noobs can start here, I would choose this sector as your default sector. So then players joining will just join this one, and then they can have their Earth drop pod, and they don't have to switch servers again. It just kind of makes it simpler. So the other one, normal sector, it's just a normal sector, just like the default one, but it's not going to be a default one. And then the last one is the general sector. So this is everything else in the world that you have not defined already by the default sector and the normal sector. So I usually call this one like deep space, because I put all my planets and stuff in sectors and moons and everything, and then deep space is just everything else, which is non-spacey stuff, non-voxel. So that's basically the sector that everything else besides your already partitioned sectors run on. So, all right, let's go ahead and select this as our default sector. We're going to need, and you can click Add New without GPS here, and it just fills in some basic stuff. But we're going to need our, our lobby server. And this actually will run on number 3. That's usually what I run it on over here. That's just my preference. And I will actually go ahead and start all these so you can see, because I will need to fill in the ports too. And I always forget which one's which. So there you go. I'm going to be running 4 servers on this one little computer. Alright, so number 3, its configuration has a port of 270.18. So I'm going to copy that, plug that in here. Of course, the IP doesn't change. We'll just copy that. Sector name, we'll just call this, lobby server. Description, players join here first. There we go. The X, Y, and Z in the radius do not actually matter for the lobby server and the general sector, because I know that here the lobby server isn't really a real sector. It's just its own separate server, a vanilla server, and so you don't have to fill in the rest of that. So basically, the lobby server is done, and then this server will actually be our vanilla lobby server. This sync mod gets auto added, but you don't need to put any mods in here unless you want to. But just know that it reflects your join time and your load time, because you're still joining a server twice. You're joining the lobby server first, and then your actual real sector. So to decrease the load in time for players, no planets on the lobby server I would recommend, no mods. Loading into a vanilla instance that's completely empty, maybe 1 or 2 grids in there if you want to put a station in there, which I recommend. Loading is not that hard and doesn't take that long. I think I recorded it maybe 5 seconds faster if you're on an SSD, so not that big of a deal, at least in my opinion, with joining as a player. So we're going to minimize that one because I'm done. So now let's add our everything else sector, which is the general sector here. And we'll call this just, deep space. And this will actually run on number 2, server 2. This is deep space. We'll say NPCs are extremely hostile. So, if you want to add a higher NPC spawn rate up here in deep space, you can do that. Let's go ahead and fill in our IP. And then our port. So this is actually server 2. And our server 2 port is 27017. And of course, we don't really have to fill in the XYZ or the radius, because the Nexus knows that, hey, server 2 is going to be everything else. We don't have to worry about a radius. Okay. So I'm going to open up that other text document I have. I'm going to copy my Mars sector. I'm just going to paste it in here because this is our last sector we have to set up. Now this is just going to be a normal sector. That's as it defines. And then this is going to be our server 4. And you can see Mars sector got filled out, and ice is, I don't know, beware of Martians, whatever. We'll fill in our IP and the port. So this is server number 4, which is right here. Bring this one up, and our port is 27019. There we go. And you can see our XYZ got filled out, but our radius didn't. We'll say 250 kilometers again. So that's our sector setup. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't really have like a picture diagram, but that's basically what I do. Also, some little FYIs. Do not have your sectors overlap. So what I mean by that is picture a Venn diagram and how those circles kind of intersect. You can't have spherical regions intersect, because in that Venn diagram, that little center spot, then you have 2 sectors occupying the same space, which is, I guess, parallel worlds, if you want to get into that, which you can't really do that in SC. Don't do that. You'll mess everything up. So make sure when you're doing your sectors is give them plenty of space so they don't intersect, and even map them out if you have to. I'm sure there's a spherical graphing 3D grapher out there. You could type in where you want your spheres and the radiuses and stuff. So also, while I'm thinking about it, the XYZs are in meters, the radius is in kilometers. So again, I stated earlier that you can have nested instances. So, if you want to add another Mars sector here, let me copy that. Add new, and if you want to run this on, I don't know, server 1, you could say Mars subsector, beware of, I don't know, yellow people, maybe that's another subrace of the Martians. You type in the IP, which in this case, server 1, which in reality I could probably specify servers and just get the IP from the server ID, but you're still going to have to put it in here for now. So server 1 is actually 27016, There we go, and this is again a normal sector, and we'll say the radius is 100 kilometers. So then, now we have a nested instance that you can do, and it's running on the Earth/Moon sector. So you can do that. I'm not going to do that in this case, but it does work. And since it hasn't moved in position, only the radius, our spheres don't actually intersect. They're just inside of each other. Okay? So, alrighty. Perfect. So setup is done, basically. At least your sector's set up. I'll go through and what these other tabs do and stuff, and what you have to do on the plugin side to make sure everything is connected. So connected servers, once your servers are actually running instead of stopped, your connected servers will pop up here and they'll populate player count. Sim speed is always 1. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to be rewriting UI anyways, and so this will likely change. But yeah, this will just tell you which servers are connected and being connected right now. Sync is apparently empty, so don't worry about that. Player location. So this is a big thing. I'm actually on here because this is an existing config file, and this is actually good because it tells me I can show you guys what it does. So in this case, that's me, Casimir, and then my Steam ID, and then on server 1, last seen, total play time, obviously hasn't worked, and then transfers. So what this does is it keeps track of where your client is connected to. So if a player hops between servers and they log off in server 4, it'll actually tell you this here, and it'll say, hey, this player's on server 4. So what this does is when a player rejoins the lobby, maybe they logged off for the night, the lobby will tell them, hey, you're on server 4 now. Go ahead and connect to server 4. So that's how you don't lose track of which server you're connected to. The player doesn't have to remember that. It does it automatically. So even players that are offline in cryopods and someone jumped that ship to another sector, it'll still report that player transfer here. So when the player rejoins and their body's in another sector, they'll actually still spawn in their body properly. And so that's actually a cool thing, I think, just to keep track of, and you don't lose the effect of that, the sectors. It'll all be connected, I think, with the player experience. So this next thing is data transfers. So this is my way of backing up grids during transfers. So what actually happened here is when I created some new sectors, all these ships got moved around and they were trying to send to another sector, and the sector was offline, and so they got stored here. So how this works is this only comes into play when a player is trying to transfer to a sector that is offline. I don't have a system in place to let the player know, hey, don't jump to the sector because the sector is offline or restarting or under maintenance or something. So it still cuts your grid, but at that point, the player is without a grid and they just got sent back to the lobby. So they're just kind of in limbo, that grid is. So instead, I cut and paste that grid, save it to file, and I put it here. I also do grid backup plugin tie-in, so if you have that plugin too, it does it when it cuts and pastes the grid from servers and to servers. It does it both. So you shouldn't really have to worry about losing grids. It backs it up automatically, basically twice. So back to this. It tells you from which server the grid was being transferred to and which server it is transferring to. It also tells you the time, when it happened, the number of grids in the PCU. So that's kind of good on your part as an admin perspective, just to see what happened and where that grid went. So usually there's an owner name in here, but since these were all unoccupied grids, there wasn't. And so what happens is the owner name gets stuck in here in the Steam ID, and when a player rejoins this to server, like server 1 where they're supposed to be, this grid will actually get pasted with that. And so if there was characters in there and everything, it'll get pasted back in, and then all will be swell. So, and it'll be removed here. But in this case, since there was no owner names, these grids are just kind of in limbo. They will never be spawned, and I guess that's a bad idea on my part. But grid backup's still there. This was kind of a rough thing, I guess, to get it started. Eventually, I want to set up the boundaries where it will push you away from the sector wall, that boundary wall, so it doesn't actually let you continue, and if you're jumping outside the sector, it won't let you jump either. It'll just say, hey, you're jumping to a sector that's offline. Try again. And so that'll get cut out this whole data transfer tab where I don't have to back up grids, and it'll tell players, I don't want to log out right now. I don't want to force transfer, anything. So that's eventually the end goal. The configs, good time to talk about the network configs. Okay, so on these plugins, there is the TCP controller IP or domain, and the publisher port and the subscriber port. And this has a publisher port and subscriber port too on the controller. So whatever this controller is running on, you have to make sure whichever ports you select here, they have to be open. And you can check to see if your ports are open by running this application and using an open port checker tool. I just found one off Google, and you type in those 2 ports and it'll tell you success or failed. So once that's been working, you pick 2 ports, 3101 and 3100, both seem to work fine. For me, I know I think there's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. You do what you want. But for this case, let's talk about these 2 ports. So once you verify that those ports are open, you come over here and you say, hey, which IP is the controller running on? So if you're running this server on a different box, let's say right now I could be in Dallas and you want to run another server in California, LA. You could type in the IP of that Dallas box, which is the controller is running on, and the publisher port and the subscriber port. And that will connect properly to this controller. So right now I have that 127.0.0.1, which is actually the built-in local IP for the controller. So that works. But a public IP would work too, just like if I did my public IP in there, because that's my public IP, and I have those ports forwarded as well. Of course, we talked about this server ID. So the way these publisher and subscriber ports work, it should make sense. Commands get published through a port, and then they get sent back through the subscriber, and they listen to that port. So that's just how the commands work. I won't get into detail on the networking because it's kind of boring and kind of complicated. Make sure all of those are the same. You can see here. Yep, good. And I have my other one somewhere. There we go. Good. Any network config changes in the controller or the plugin requires a complete restart. So if you're changing this and you're like, you click start and you're like, why isn't this working? You have to make sure to restart your server. So just close it out, reopen it, and then click start, and it should be fine. Okay, so you can see here it already initialized to that port, so you have to make sure to restart it. Okay, well, I've got some help here I'm setting up. Firewall. So yeah, this is a good reminder, Firewall. So you might be wondering what prevents other players or other servers or whoever they want with this plugin to connect to your controller here, because this is a public port, and basically just promote themselves and go willy-nilly wherever they want, spawning and stuff, because everything's synced. Windows actually has the ability to firewall ports. So what I mean by that is restrict access from IPs to communicate through ports. And that is what I totally recommend you to sit down and read how to do that. I haven't seen anybody yet try to hack into the controller and interject their commands into the system. But I guarantee you eventually somebody will try. So be careful and set up your firewall to do that. It should be pretty easy, and I could probably include a link into the video below. Ooh, that's weird. I love saying that. Include a link in the comments below, whatever. And you can sit through, read it, and then once you set up your ports, I would go in there and set up your firewall to restrict access only to the IPs that you know that are going to be communicating. Okay. And I've also got some contributors here you can read through, and thanks for everyone who's helped at least made this possible just by me bouncing ideas off of and stuff and me asking questions. Okay, so at this point, after you do everything and everything's working, you basically just click start. That's all you gotta do. There we go. And there you go. So you see if it's no data from the master, most likely this is a new system, which is, let me double check, is correct because I deleted it. So what that means is I sync everything off of the save file. So there's no SQL database, no external online database. This is all done through the server saves. And so you can actually just easily resync, and I'll show you that. Basically lets you resync an entire network off of one save. So that's kind of nifty. You know, you just drop in a save, drag, drop, rename it, start up Nexus, and then start up all your sectors, and then you're off in the races. And so that's how you do backups too. So if something's out of sync, all you have to do is save the server, leave this running, of course, save the servers, close them, and then just restart them. Everything syncs off that one save file. That's how it redistributes. So some tips and tricks when running this. I'm just keep on talking here. Whatever you do not close out of the controller. Do not close out of the controller. Do not close out of the controller. I cannot stress that enough. All the commands get relayed through the controller. So if this closes, you're going to have desync on your hands. I would close the servers immediately and restart them all, because messages will not get transferred. So if a player connects and this crashes and then it restarts, guess what? This identity ID is only on this server and not on the other ones because it didn't get communicated. So yeah, do not close it out. Make sure this stays running, and make sure your internet connection is at least halfway decent between boxes that are running servers and communicating to the controller, because delays can come into play. And but if they're all running through the lobby, the main thing is your player identities. So if they all join the lobby, they're all coming in through one choke point. They all get created there and get broadcasted. Okay, did I miss a server? No, they're all running. So perfect, they all started running here. Awesome. So now what I can do is I can move all these over here. Okay, and I can just join game, join history. So this don't join me 3 is actually my lobby. So don't judge the name. But you can see here I'm going to join. Waiting for server to respond. And it's going to put me in the lobby, going to disconnect me again. Here I am going to reload into my proper sector, which technically was sector 1 still because it had me in the player locations here on server 1. Okay. Awesome. So here I am. I can click on this survival kit that is still in the game when I spawned here. So you can see that quest log window just popped up. So you can see description, PvE only, noobs can start here. So that's kind of a cool thing, and it'll auto-close after a minute or two, so you don't have to worry about commands. I think it's a kind of nifty thing if you want, player interaction. So yeah, I will leave this here, but we will fly out to the edge of 250 kilometers here. Oop, that's a little bit too much. We'll say, 248 right here. We'll spawn our character here. I'll probably wait for that sector thing to close the quest log. So you can see I typed in Earth/Moon sector in the name, but I put sector at the end in the string, so you really don't have to type in sector here, because it double does it. So just fair warning, that's kind of stupid in my opinion. Okay, so I'm gonna fly a little bit. Oh, let me turn on my jetpack. Fly a little bit here. So the quest log closed. That was about a minute. And I'm going to get close, within a kilometer of the edge of that sphere. And you can see here if something pops up. So it'll tell you which sector you're currently approaching to jump and how far you are. So that's great if you're flying a ship and you're scraping the edge, you're in the heat of the battle. You're trying to see what distance do I need to make to the sector jump, or whatever I need to do to not jump sectors. You can scrape along the outside here if you wanted to and keep that distance. It'll continuously update as I get closer to the boundary. And once it reaches 0, which I will show you, it's going to send me to server number 2, which is the deep space sector. And this is something I have not defined in space, which is everything else. So you can see here, I'm getting cut, pasted. And of course, this is characters only. I'll do grids here in a second. I'll actually spawn in a grid, and we'll go to the Mars sector, and I'll do the same thing. So switching servers, see my grid got pasted, and you can see 163 meters. That was from my character still moving and slowing down. So there we go. I'll back out away. As I get further away from the sector, the 1 kilometer warning will dissipate. There we go. So now I'm safe and I'm in server number 2. Don't join me number 2. Alright, let's paste in a ship. What do you mind? What do you think? I love this little jump ship. There we go. And for some reason the quest log didn't pop up for the server. So that's something I have to look into, I guess. All right, Mars sector. And you can see I should have a GPS. Oh, I don't. So what I'm going to do is, since I still have that Mars sector GPS, I'm just going to do that. And we're just going to do new from clipboard. Let's say Mars sector. Just to give me the center of that sector. We can get up nice and close. I'll do a little admin jump in here. 250 kilometers. There we go. We'll get nice and close here. Perfect, right there. So here I am just outside of that Mars sector that we defined earlier. So I'm going to fly up close to it. And that warning should pop up. So anybody in the grid will show, and I'll rotate my ship so it's, you know, not white text on a white planet. So you can see that distance is decreasing. Here I am going to jump to that Mars sector. There we go. Cut, pasted, grid has been transferred. Now I'm going into server number 4. Space engineers take pride for their ability to get the job done right, no matter how big, how complex, or how remote. Wikipedia, 2077. Okay, so here I am. My grid is moving. My dampeners were slowing a nice grid down there, and that's why I traveled kind of further. So here I'm back in my grid, flying around, of course, still in my cockpit. I would show you that I'm still in my faction, but I'm in admin mode. So let me disable my creative mode tools, and so there we go. So all these undiscovered factions and factions I've discovered already. That's all still synced. My GPS coordinates, as you can see, are synced, so that's great. So yeah, that covers it. Oh, while I'm on it, so here I am on server number 4, and my respawn pod on Earth is on server number 1. What I can do is, oh, I died out here. I don't have a respawn pod on my ship. How am I going to get to that other sector? You know, get back to my main base. Well, respawn locations are actually synced. So what you have to do is just give it a second. It takes a second for it to refresh and update to pull the server. But you can see here, bam, there's my survival kit. You can click on it. You can see it on Earth. Now, my grid here is on Earth, but I'm still in the Mars sector. So you might be wondering, how am I streaming in a grid here? Well, this is all done client side. So this grid is actually not in the game. Of course, how do I get rid of that stupid pop-up? There we go. This grid is not actually in the game. It's actually just rendered client side only. So that's awesome. And it'll close out whatever, it'll remove it, but you know, it doesn't really affect anything because it's kind of like a ghost grid, spoofed grid. So I can just click respawn there. Bam. And it's going to respawn me on that grid back on server 1. And of course, this will work to all available respawn pods to you in whichever grid, wherever they are in the game. I haven't tested moving grids because I'm only one player, but I would expect, because it spawns you right when you connect to the game automatically. So I don't think it'll be an issue. So here I am, right here, spawned on my Earth/Moon pod. And here's the sector provider. I don't understand why it's only this sector working. I don't know. Maybe it's too big, too small. The text is for the XYZ coordinates. I don't know. In any case, but respawn sector respawn sync works pretty good. So I'm back on my real grid here, back in the server number 1, which, you know, don't join me. There's supposed to be a 1 there. Ever multiplication, 1 means nothing. But in the other server, Earth was this was actually in sunlight. That's another thing I haven't synced yet, is the sun rotation. And that kind of just, you know, I think furthers the effect or whatever of the transferring. You know, servers are operational, servers restart, so to sync all the sun rotations to a time clock would be amazing. A time clock on the controller, so they would all just restart to their, you know, sim speed changes too. So yeah, I think that covers the setup. I'm trying to think of anything else I want to cover. Oh yeah, let me talk about the future updates because I'll forget. So right now I'm working on some lobby spawn commands. So essentially I want the lobby server to be kind of like, you know, I don't know what those Minecraft server hubs are called, but you can spawn there, walk around, wait, still talk to players, of course, which you can do that. But you can actually now go to lobby on will in any other sector. You can just transfer your character there. So you can just talk around and stuff. But I'm also working on the plan is to kind of tie that into the lobby rework. And so maybe you can add some custom drop pods there in the lobby that you just walk on like a little pad and it'll teleport you to these custom drop pods you can define. Also, I want new players to actually spawn in the lobby first and get rid of that default sector. So what that would do is you could kind of have players spawn in your lobby. You could have rules actually on LCD panels. They could walk around, see the station, still talk to people, and then once they confirm something, they could actually join the real world or the real sectors and stuff with those spawn options. And so then they wouldn't ever have to go back there, you know, it would be done automatically because then they'll actually have a point in that server, you know, for their first time join. There's lots of stuff here I need to do. Strong unknown signal sync isn't done. I'm working on a mod / plugin API so you can talk, you know, mods can talk to each other across servers. Radar mod is planned for that as well. Major rewrite in the controller app, like I said, this is utter garbage, so don't judge it. You know, some progression sync stuff, I had some errors, and then, I've archived a lot of stuff I finished, but sun rotation sync is one of the ideas I had and I need to do. Seamless client transfers, that's far out. I don't know if I ever will get to that, but yeah, I think that covers most of it. I'm sure I've enlightened most of you guys on how to set up and configure this and everything. So, yeah, all right. Well, I am signing off, and make sure to not leave a like and subscribe because I don't really want this YouTube to be popular. So, all right. Thank you.